purport. Okay, anyway, we heard about the Kali Yuga and how Cricket, was going to kill him because he was torturing a cow. How when Cricket questioned the bull about who's done this, the bull gave a lot of philosophical things, saying you can't know for sure what's the cause of this because different people will say different things, which is a good lesson because in the modern day and probably then even, we always want to blame someone else for our problem. Even if we definitely created the problem, we blame someone else. So, like we see that if there's a car accident or something, you really get it. Everybody's shouting that it's the other guy's fault. So the whole story with Cricket is quite amazing. And the Pandava is retired because Krishna had disappeared. He didn't want to think about it, but it came about. So I'll just read more. And everybody should think how we can apply this in our own life, in our temples, in our organization of our societies, in our classes and teaching these principles, Krishna Bhakti Yoga is a very practical process. It includes, everything. It's psychology. It engages all the senses. But it's meant, we're meant to have a society, a Krishna conscious society. That Varnashram means everybody's working for Krishna, actually. That's the ultimate meaning of Varnashram. Too many people think Varnashram means I decide I'm a Brahmin and everyone else is a Sudra. And everyone should just bow down, but that's not Varnashram. Not labeling anybody. We want to make everybody devotees. Okay, so the prolonged sacrificial ceremonies undertaken by the sages at Naimisharanya were begun shortly after the demise of Maharaj Parikshit. The sacrifice was to continue for 1,000 years. As understood in the beginning, some of the contemporaries of Baladev, the elder brother of Lord Krishna, also visited the sacrificial place. According to some authorities, the present tense is used to indicate the nearest margin of time from the past. In that sense, the present sense is applied to the reign of Maharaj Parikshit. For the continuous fact also, present tense can be used. The principles of Maharaj Parikshit can still be continued, and human society can still be improved if there is determination by the authorities. We can still purge out from the state all the activities of immorality introduced by the personality of Kali if we are determined to take action like Maharaj Parikshit. He allotted some place for Kali, but in fact, Kali could not find such places in the world at all because Maharaj Parikshit was strictly vigilant to see that there were no places for gambling, drinking, prostitution, and animal slaughter. Think how powerful a king would have to be nowadays to do that. Instead, the government is just licensing all these things, making money from it. In some places, it's not even licensing, but usually they like to license it so they can tax. Governments will promote gambling, even though they know it creates crime and all kinds of problems like suicide, because they make so much money from it. They tax the gambling very high. And people don't like to pay taxes in Kali Yuga because they think, what is the government doing for me? Although they don't realize that only due to the government that you have any kind of a road or you have water or you have electricity, but they don't understand that. But anyway, so they call it a voluntary tax. People are happy to throw their money into the lottery and throw their money into the gambling. And that way they can reduce other taxes and campaign like that. Oh, just see, we've reduced this tax or that tax. But they've increased the gambling tax. People don't know. Okay. Modern administrators want to banish corruption from the state, but fools that they are, they do not know how to do it. They want to issue licenses for gambling house, shops selling wine and other intoxicants, brothels, prostitution, hotels, and cinema houses. And notice Prabhupada always throws in this cinema house along with all the other 4 regulative principles, because the movies are generally promoting all the sinful activities. And they allow falsity in all dealings, even their own. At the same time, they want to drive out corruption from the state. They want the kingdom of God without God consciousness. How can it be possible to adjust 2 contradictory matters? If we want to drive out corruption from the state, we must first of all organize society to accept the principles of religion, austerity, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness. That means no gambling, no intoxication, no animal slaughter, no prostitution. To make the condition favorable, we must close all places of gambling, drinking, prostitution, and falsity. These are some of the practical lessons from the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam. So obviously we can't do that. Even if we did get governmental power, we'd have to slowly, but we can do our best to educate people to follow the 4 regulative principles one by one. And when enough people are doing that, and they're chanting the holy name and whatever religion they have, every religious tradition, if you go back, they have these same principles: gambling, intoxication, but many have, they don't, at least, especially meat eating, they don't know anything. And they say you can do in moderation. Churches in America, in order for fundraising, I haven't heard of it for some time, but I remember it long ago. And I don't hear what the churches are doing, but they would bring like casino machines and have a gambling night at the church, and then they'd make a lot of money. Especially they'd have this game named bingo. That seems more innocent. People are betting, and church makes a lot of money. So then they naturally will think, well, I'll go to the casino and gamble, and when I win, I'll donate to the church. So these are practical lessons, and how we can apply it is to spread the holy name, because that'll purify people so that they can follow these things. Itam bhutanu bhavoyam abhimanyu sato nripa yatya palaya takshoni yuyam satkaya dikshita. Okay, there was some background noise. Maharaj Parikshit, the son of Abhimanyu, is so experienced by dint of his expert administration and patronage, it has been possible for you to perform a sacrifice like this. Purport. The Brahmanas and sannyasis are expert in spiritual advancement in society, whereas the Kshatriyas, administrators are expert in material peace and prosperity in the human society. It's supposed to be. Now, modern day, those who are labeled Brahmanas are often not Brahman. That includes any kind of priestly class in any religion, or professors, teachers. They don't teach anything spiritual. or they say it's spiritual, but they're just exploiting. Maharaj Pricket was experienced enough. All of them are pillars of all happiness. Therefore, they are meant for full cooperation of human welfare. Maharaj Pricket was experienced enough to drive away Kali from his field of activities and thereby make the state receptive to spiritual enlightenment. If the common people are not receptive, it's very difficult to impress upon them the necessity of spiritual advancement. And austerity, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness. Again and again, we're hearing that. So remember it. And it's a nice way of saying it, you know. Mercy is something everybody would like to have. Truthfulness, everybody wants. The newspapers are full of articles to drive out corruption, but then the news itself is full of lies. Real cleanliness means to clean the mind also, body internally and externally. Most people only think external. Wash your clothes, wash your hair, you know, get some nice smelling soap. But we have to clean internally by eating pure food and then clean the mind by mantra. These prepare the ground to receive spiritual advancement. Maharaj Pricket made this favorable condition possible. Thus, the rishis at Naimisharanya were able to perform a sacrifice for 1,000 years. In other words, without state support, no doctrines of philosophy or religious principles can progressively advance. There should be complete cooperation between the Brahmanas and the Kshatriyas for this common good. Even up to the Maharaj Ashoka, the same spirit was prevailing. Lord Buddha was sufficiently supported by King Ashoka, and thus his particular cult of knowledge was spread all over the world. Because the Indian kings got fed up with, there was so much politics and wars between different Hindu groups, and that's why the Muslims were able to conquer, different people were able to conquer, because they took advantage of the quarrels between the so-called Hindu kings, and they would back one, you know, to help him defeat his next door neighbor one, and then they would take over both because the kings were not united. So Ashoka became very big, and he became a Buddhist because it was peaceful. But then Shankaracharya drove Buddhism out of India, and then the Buddhists moved to Asia. Okay, chapter 18, Maharaj Pricket cursed by the Brahmin boy. Did we read this last week? Because I read the different parts of the Bhagavatam so much. I have a bookmark for here, so I thought that's it. Due to mercy of the personality of Godhead, Krishna, who acts wonderfully, Maharaj Pricket, though struck by the weapon of the son of Drona in his mother's womb, could not be burned. Purport. The sages of Naimisharanya became struck with wonder after hearing about the wonderful administration of Maharaj Pricket, especially in reference to his punishing the personality of Kali and making him completely unable to do any harm within the kingdom. Sutta Goswami was equally anxious to describe Maharaj Pricket's wonderful birth and death, and this verse is indicated by Sutta Goswami to increase the interest of the sages of Naimisharanya. So think of how, you know, Sutta Goswami is such a personality that he could just hear this 1 week of talk from Sukadev Goswami and remember everything. And repeat it in a very interesting way to attract the sages. Furthermore, Maharaj Pricket was always consciously surrendered to the personality of Godhead, and therefore he was neither afraid nor overwhelmed by fear due to the snake bird, which was to bite him because of the fury of a Brahmin boy. The self-surrendered devotee of the Lord is called Narayana Parayana. Such a person is never afraid of any place or person, not even of death. For him, nothing is important as the Supreme Lord, and thus he gives equal importance to heaven and hell. He knows well that both heaven and hell are creations of the Lord, and similar that life and death are different conditions of existence created by the Lord. But in all conditions, in all circumstances, he considers remembrance of Narayana essential. The Narayana Parayana practices constantly. Maharaj was such a pure devotee, he was wrongfully cursed by the inexperienced son of a Brahmin who was under the influence of Kali. And Maharaj Parikshit took this curse to be sent by Narayan. And of course it was, because it gave us this, setting for the Bhagavatam to be spoken. He knew that Narayan, Krishna had saved him when he was burned in the womb of his mother, and that if he were killed by a snake bite, would also take place by the will of the Lord. The devotee never goes against the will of the Lord. Anything sent by God is a blessing for the devotee. Therefore, Maharaj Parikshit was neither afraid nor bewildered by such things. That is a sign of a pure devotee of the Lord. Equal in happiness and distress, equal in honor and dishonor. Prabhupada was saying when they were bombing Calcutta when he was a child, he was actually not exactly a child, he was a teenager, but he said he saw Krishna in the universal form. A devotee, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj used to say, when trouble's coming, he thinks, oh, good, here comes Krishna. When death is coming, he thinks, here comes Krishna. That's advanced. Furthermore, after leaving all his associates, the king surrendered himself as a disciple to Sukadeva Goswami, the son of Vyasadeva. And thus he was able to understand the actual position of the personality of Godhead. And at last he gave up his material body on the banks of the Ganges. Purport. The word Ajita is significant. Personality of Godhead is known as Ajita, unconquerable, and he is in every respect. No one can know his actual position. He's unconquerable by knowledge also. We have heard about his dham or place, eternal Goloka. Vrindavan, but there are many scholars who interpret this abode in different ways. But by the grace of the spiritual master like Sukadeva Goswami, unto whom the king gave himself up as the most humble disciple, one is able to understand the actual position of the Lord. His eternal abode and his transcendental paraphernalia in the Dham. Knowing the transcendental position of the Lord and the transcendental method by which one can approach the transcendental Dham, the king was confident about his ultimate destination. And by knowing this, he could leave aside everything material, even his own body, without any difficulty or attachment. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is stated, Param Drishtva Nivartante. One can give up all material attachment when one is able to see the Param, or the superior quality of things. From the Bhagavad Gita, we understand the quality of the Lord's energy that is superior to the material energy. And by the grace of a bona fide spiritual master like Sukadeva Goswami, it is quite possible to know everything of the superior energy of the Lord, by which the Lord manifests his eternal name, quality, pastimes, paraphernalia, and variegatedness. Unless one thoroughly understands the superior or eternal energy of the Lord. It is not possible to leave the mature energy. However, one may theoretically speculate on the true nature of the absolute truth. By the grace of Krishna, Maharaj Parikshit was able to receive the mercy of such a personality as Sukadeva Goswami, and thus he was able to know the actual position of the unconquerable Lord. It's very difficult to find the Lord from the Vedic literatures, but it's very easy to know him by the mercy of a devotee like Sukadeva Goswami. Okay, everybody knows Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, what is it, verse 9? Janma karma chamedivyam evam yo veti tatpataha. One who can know the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not have to take birth again. He can attain to my abode. So Prabhupada is telling us again and again, if we just know Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, study that, read the book. Okay, now there's a verse in Brahma Samhita that Prabhupada is more or less saying in this last part of the paragraph. Who knows that one? Somebody? Salika? You have a lot of books behind you. If that's a virtual books, I don't know. Everybody knows, right? Vedesha Durlabham Adurlabham Atma. What is it?
Vedesha Durlabham Adurlabham Atma Bhakta Govinda. I'm forgetting the first stanza. Vedesha Adurlabham Atma Bhakta.
Yeah.
First two lines, I'm not remembering.
It's very difficult to know this Krishna by the Vedas because there's so many other things there. And they're distracting, all these, glories of these flowery words. But Adurlabham Atma Bhakto, it's very easy by bhakti because it's just revealed. But Krishna is pleased when we try to serve him, Tesham Satati Yuktanam, and then he reveals himself. So that's why we're just trying to give this knowledge out. And we're trying to go out and spread the holy name. People like this village head or whoever, they don't appreciate that. Materialistic people can't appreciate that devotees, simply by maintaining a worship of a deity and chanting the holy name, are doing the highest welfare work. That's stated in Bhagavatam. Prabhupada says it many times. Our mantra cards, when I joined, they all said the ultimate welfare work or something like that. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. They'll ask us, how can that help the poverty? How can that help? The poverty is due to the corruption and greedy people taking more than they need and everything. So if consciousness gets elevated, only Krishna can do that. That's why we're just focusing on spreading the holy name. Still, we have to make a show to please him. So that they'll become attracted to chant, whether they chant their own name of God, whether they're Allah or Jesus or whatever, Buddha. It's all right, but do it, because most of them don't do it. This was so because those who have dedicated their lives to the transcendental topics of the personality of Godhead, whom the Vedic literatures, and who are constantly engaged in remembering the lotus feet of the Lord, do not run the risk of having misconceptions, even at the last moment of their life. So there's a lot of guarantees like this throughout the Bhagavatam. It's good to note them. The highest, but don't think, okay, I've made it and I'll just, no, we want to help others. Like I was distributing books, and People say, is it free? If it's a gift, okay, I'll give it to you. But in a culture like Vedic culture, if someone gives you a gift, you will feel obliged to reciprocate somehow or other. Cultured people, but now they just know, give me, like children, It's my birthday, what are you going to give me? And they're thinking they should give me more. You give somebody something and they say, oh, you should have given me yesterday. You should give me more. Very uncultured. The real thing is if you give me a gift, you give me 100 naira, 100 CDs or whatever, I should be thinking how I can give you more back. Whether it's in kind or whether it's in some other kind of service or something. But we should want to give back more than we get. And ultimately, everything's coming from Krishna, everything's coming from Guru. So one is thinking, how can I repay? How can I repay what Krishna has given us? Is give it to others. That's what pleases Krishna the most. And to give it to others, we have to be purified ourselves and have some Shakti. The highest perfection of life is attained by remembering the transcendental nature of the Lord at the last moment of one's life. This perfection of life is possible for one who has learned the actual transcendental nature of the Lord from the Vedic hymns sung by a liberated soul like Shukadeva Goswami, or someone in that line of disciplic succession. There is no gain in hearing the Vedic hymns from some mental speculator. When the same is heard from an actual self-realized soul and is properly understood by service and submission, everything becomes transparently clear. Thus, a submissive disciple is able to live transcendentally and continue to the end of life. By scientific adaptation, one is able to remember the Lord even at the end of life, when the power of remembrance is slackened due to derangement of the bodily membranes. For a common man, it is very difficult to remember things as they are at the time of death. But by the grace of the Lord and his bona fide devotees, the spiritual masters can get this opportunity without difficulty. And it was done in the case of Maharaj Parikshit. Now we have the example of Prabhupada, that his time of death came by very slowly. There was tremendous pain, but he was composing purports to Srimad Bhagavatam up until the last. Jesus Christ was being tortured, and he kept a cool head. Not so easy to do. We had shown many devotees in our movement. They also left their body very peacefully. So as long as the great powerful son of Abhimanyu remains the emperor of the world, there's no chance for Kali will flourish. But like we see, there was influence was coming in, like this Shringi, the boy Brahmin. It says again and again, he was influenced by Kali, but Kali was not flourishing, like he is now. And so we need to create more and more kirtan, because he doesn't like kirtan. He doesn't like the Harinam Sankirtan. As we've already explained, the personality of Kali has entered the jurisdiction of this earth long ago and was looking for an opportunity to spread his influence all over the world. But he could not do so due to the presence of Maharaj Parikshit. That is a way of good government. The disturbing elements, like the personality of Kali, will always try to extend their nefarious activities, but it's the duty of the able state to check it by all means. Although Maharaj Pariksit allotted places for the personality of Kali. At the same time, he gave no chance for the citizens to be swayed. Of course, the places he gave, they didn't exist. So only the places where gold was being hoarded. So that's how he got his little start. And then when Maharaj Pariksit gave up his life by Krishna's arrangement, Kali could flourish. The very day and moment the personality of Godhead, Krishna, left this earth, the personality of Kali, who promotes all kinds of irreligious activities, came into the world. Purport. The personality of Godhead and his holy name, qualities, etc., are identical. The personality of Kali was not able to enter the jurisdiction of the earth due to the presence of the personality of Godhead. And similarly, if there's an arrangement for the constant chanting of the holy names, qualities, etc., of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there's no chance at all for the personality of Kali to enter. That is the technique of driving away the personality of Kali from the world. In modernized human society, there are great advancement of material science, and they have invented the radio to distribute sound in the air. So instead of vibrating some nuisance sound for sense enjoyment, if the state arranges to distribute transcendental sound by resounding the holy name, fame, and activities of the Lord, as they are authoritatively given in Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam, then a favorable condition will be created and the principles of religion will be reestablished in the world, and thus the executive heads who are so anxious to drive away corruption from the world will be successful. Nothing is bad if properly used for the service of the Lord. So corruption is everywhere in the Kali Yuga, comes into religious societies. In fact, I was asking Vasudeva one time, because in Nigeria, the headlines are always about corruption, at least when I was there. And I was asking him to write a scholarly article, how the corruption starts with the corrupt so-called religious leaders who are teaching sense gratification in the name of God, in the name of Jesus. And who themselves are living very opulent lives and not following any religious principles. So that filters down to the government. Don't blame the government exactly. Don't blame anybody because it's Kali Yuga. But understand it's Kali. So we have to fight, stay aloof from Kali and teach others by giving them the holy name and purifying. Kali is called a fallen age. Someone else want to read? Who can read this? Start with Yaduna, lower right-hand corner on my screen. You there? Can you unmute him or is he muted?
No, Prabhu, can you unmute? Do you have this book with you? Or I should share the screen? The next verse. I think 18:7, because she was realistic.
Purport. Please read.
Okay, Maharaj, I can read. Yet not Prabhu seems not to be available.
Somebody,
Text number.
Can I read? Add one?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can go
Okay.
ahead and read, Prabhu.
Okay, I think we are text 7. Right. So,
Yeah. purport.
Yep, Madam Prabhu, you can read if you.
okay. So, have we read this translation? Paraparisi was a realist.
You read the purport.
Okay, the purport. The age of Kali is called the fallen age. In this fallen age, because of the living beings being in the awkward position, the Supreme Lord has given some special facilities to them. So by the will of the Lord, a living being does not become a victim of a sinful act until the act is actually performed. In other ages, simply by thinking of performing a sinful act, one used to become a victim of the act. On the contrary, a living being in this age is awarded with the result of pious acts simply by thinking of them. Mara Parishit, being the most learned and experienced king by the grace of the Lord, was not unnecessarily envious of the personality of Kali because he did not intend to give him any chance to perform any sinful act. He protected the subjects from the falling prey to the sinful acts of the age of Kali, and at the same time, he gave full facility to the age of Kali by allotting him some particular places. At the end of the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is said that even though all nefarious activities of the personality of Kali are present, there is a great advantage in the age of Kali. One can attain salvation simply by chanting the holy name of the Lord. Thus, Maharaj Parishit made an organized effort to propagate chanting of the Lord's holy name, and thus he saved the citizens from the clutches of Kali. It is for this advantage only that great sages sometimes wish all good for the age of Kali. In the Vedas also, it is said that by discourse of Lord Krishna's activities, one can get rid of all the disadvantage of the age of Kali. In the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, it is also said that by the recitation of Srimad Bhagavatam, the Supreme Lord becomes at once arrested within one's heart. These are some of the great advantages of the age of Kali. And Maharaj Parishit took all the advantages and did not think any ill of the age of the Kali, true to his Vaishnavite culture, a cult.
Okay, so that's an important point. In the early part of the Bhagavatam, I think second canto, Sukadeva Goswami actually tells Parikshit that he should organize loud chanting of the holy name. You know, he should organize Sankirtan. He should recognize the potency of that. So in our line, that's all been going on in one way or another. Lord Chaitanya went out chanting, sent Nityananda every day, telling everyone chant Hare Krishna. Bhaktisiddhanta had huge Harinam parties in Calcutta, and Prabhupada started with a few people going out in New York City and stressed it and loved it, and we're doing it all over the world. And the more we do that, you get so much spiritual benefit. So Kali Yuga is an ocean of fault, but there's one great thing. Kirtanadeva Krishnasya. Okay, next verse. Who wants to read again now?
Krishna Maharaj, I can read. Maharaj Parikshit considered that less intelligent men might find the personality of Kali to be very powerful. But that those who are self-controlled, who have nothing to fear. The king was powerful like a tiger and took care for the foolish, careless persons. Purport. Those who are not devotees, unless one is thoroughly intelligent, one cannot be a devotee of the Lord. Those who are not devotees of the Lord fall prey to the actions of Kali. It will not be possible to bring about a saner condition in society unless we are prepared to accept the modes of action adopted by Maharaj Parishit, i.e., propagation of the devotional service of the Lord to the common man. Hare Krishna.
All right. Again and again, we're hearing this. You know, this is Prabhupada writing even when he's in India, just stressing we want to do the Sankirtan. And of course, his vision was this would go all over the world. Okay, someone else for the next verse.
Maharaj, can I read?
Yeah.
Krishna.
Oh sages, as you did ask me, now I have described almost everything regarding the narration about the Lord Krishna in connection with the history of the pious Maharaj Parikshit. Purport. Srimad Bhagavatam is the history of the activities of the Lord, and the activities of the Lord are performed in the relation with the devotee of the Lord. Therefore, the history of the devotees is not different from the history of the Lord Krishna's activities. A devotee of the Lord regards both the activities of the Lord and those of his pure devotees on an equal level, for they are all transcendental. Should I continue?
Yeah.
Okay. Translation. Those who are desirous of achieving complete perfection in life must submissively hear all topics that are connected with the transcendental activities and qualities of the personality of Godhead, who act wonderfully. Purport. The systematic hearing of the transcendental activities, qualities, and name of the Lord, Sri Krishna, pushes one towards eternal life. Systematic hearing means knowing him gradually in touch and fact, truth and fact. And this knowing him in truth and fact means attaining eternal life. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, such transcendental glorified activities of Lord Sri Krishna are the prescribed remedy for counteracting the process of birth, death, old age, and disease, which are considered to be material award for the conditioned living being. The culmination of such a perfectional stage of life is a goal of human life and the attainment of transcendental bliss. Next translation. The good sages said, O grave Sutta Goswami, may you live many years and have eternal fame, for you are speaking very nicely about the activities of the Lord Krishna. The personality of Godhead, this is just like nectar of mortal being like us. Purport. When we hear about the transcendental qualities and activities of the personality of Godhead, we may always remember what has been spoken by the Lord himself in the Bhagavad Gita 4.9. His acts, even when he acts in the human society, are all transcendental, for they are all accentuated by the spiritual energy of the Lord, which is distinguished from his material energy. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, such acts are called divyam. This means that he does not act or take his birth like an ordinary living being under the custody of material energy, nor is his body material or changeable like that of ordinary living being. And one who understands this fact either from the Lord or from authorized sources is not reborn after leaving the present material body. Such an enlightened soul is admitted into the spiritual realm of the Lord and engages in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Therefore, the more we hear about transcendental activities of the Lord, as they are stated in Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, the more we can know about his transcendental nature and thus make definite progress on the path back to Godhead. Text 12, translation.
Someone else can read now.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Any
Okay,
comment on that? It's hammering away as Prabhupada does, that this knowledge has to be spread. We have to take it in and we have to spread it. If we take it in, we'll want to naturally give it out. All right. So someone else want to read?
Kamalacha Prabhu, are you there? Kamalacha Prabhu. Okay, Yaduna Prabhu, can you read now?
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, Hare Krishna.
We have just begun the performance of this fructive activity, a sacrificial fire, without certainty of result due to the many imperfections in our action. Our bodies have become black from the smoke, but we are factually pleased by the nectar of the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead, Govinda, which you are distributing. Purport. The sacrificial fire kindled by the sages of Naimisharanya was certainly full of smoke and doubt because of so many flaws. The first flaw is that there is an acute scarcity of expert brahmanas able to carry out such performances successfully in this age of Kali. Any discrepancy in such sacrifices spoils the whole show, and the result is uncertain. Like agricultural enterprises, the good result of tilling the paddy field depends on the providential rain, and therefore the result is uncertain. Similarly, the performance of any kind of sacrifice in this age of Kali is also uncertain. Unscrupulous, greedy brahmanas of the age of Kali induce the innocent public to such uncertain sacrificial shows without disclosing the scriptural injection that in the age of Kali, there is no fruitful sacrificial performance, but the sacrifice of the congregational chanting of the holy name of the Lord. Sutta Goswami was narrating the transcendental activities of the Lord before the congregation of sages, and they were factually perceiving the result of hearing these transcendental activities. One can feel this practically, one can feel the result of eating food. Spiritual realization acts in that way. The sages of Naimisharanya were practically sufferers from smoke of a sacrificial fire. and were doubtful about the results. But by hearing from a realized person like Shuta Goswami, they were fully satisfied. In the Brahma-Vaivata Purana, Vishnu tells Shiva that in the age of Kali, men full of anxieties of various kinds can vainly labor in fructive activity and philosophical speculations. But when they are engaged in devotional service, the result is pure and certain, and there is no loss of energy. In other words, nothing performed for spiritual realization or for material benefit can be successful without devotional service to the Lord.
Very strong.
All right, that's something worthy of some comment. Salika?
Yes, Maharaj. Yes,
Yeah.
Maharaj. It's a very strong purport from Srila Prabhupada. And I'm wondering why even in our devotional setting, some of us still believe in the pujas, different forms of pujas, after reading this kind of a purport. We want to still do different types of yagya. So I'm wondering, how do one relate to this?
Yeah, all these yagyas, they're good for show and for, giving us, like all our puja, deity worship, to control our senses, keep clean, do everything in a certain way. But to be spiritually affected, there must be kirtan of the holy name. And with only kirtan of the holy name also will be effective. If we get hung up that in just all the, mudras and all the different things, and we don't chant Hare Krishna, then it's not very valuable. So we see many priests, many brahmanas, and all different religions are doing big show, but there's no substance. So we have to be careful. We need rituals, we need ceremonies, but they are not the all in all if we get hung up in just doing everything exactly right, because we can't chant these Vedic mantras perfectly. And if they're not chanting perfectly, they can have completely different effects, can be very troublesome. But if we have the Mahamantra Kirtan along with the Yagya, then that's good because it attracts people. We want to find ways and means to attract people to come and hear the Kirtan. That's the whole point of whatever we do. To attract people to come and hear the Kirtan and to hear the Bhagavatam. Right? Any comment?
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Yeah.
If I can understand you very well, I think the processes of organizing puja, maybe Satyanarayana puja, it's a process by which to attract maybe neophytes or the generality of the people. And at the end of the day, we encourage them into the chanting, congregational chanting of the holy name, and maybe also to engage them in devotional service. I don't know if it's correct, Maharaj.
Right. That's what temples are for. That's what everything we're doing is for. So we have to think of ways and means to do that. For the Indian community, definitely doing some nice yagyas and, making a show and impresses them. But then we give them the holy name. Prabhupada always thinking of ways like that. Like the life membership program. when he started in India, you know, he was promising in books. He was promising in books worth more than they were paying for the life membership, and that they could stay 3 days in any temple. So many, if not most of the people that became life members, they were just thinking, I can get a free stay when I travel. I can go to New York and I can stay for free. They weren't concerned about the facilities very much, as long as they didn't have to pay. But then they got association with devotees. They were hopefully would attend a kirtan in the temple. They would get prasadam. And that way the idea was to make devotees, not just to make money. It was to make devotees. All right, very good. So remember that and think, rack your brain to think of ways to bring people. Just like if we have a well at the temple and the local people can come and get water, that makes people very favorable to the temple, you know. But then we should have some speaker playing kirtan or something so that whoever comes, they hear the kirtan.
Okay, Maharaj.
But they know it's Hare Krishna providing water. They get some realization that the water is coming from Krishna. So that's good, right?
Yes, Maharaj.
Yeah.
Thank you, Maharaj.
We want to provide, you know, we want to, just like we do weddings, we do funerals, we have to be the priest for everybody. So weddings and funerals, they require some kind of ceremonies. But the main thing is the slokas, the kirtan, prasadam, and, you know, Bhagavad Gita, philosophy, especially funerals, you have to talk about the soul. All right, number 13. That's a very nice verse again. They're also these are really, I mean, actually the Bhagavatam, the more we read it, every verse is so wonderful. But sometimes different, like for different people, they really stand out. I really like this one because it's stated many times in different places.
Can I read, Maharaj?
Yeah.
The value of a moment's association with the devotee of the Lord cannot even be compared to the attainment of heavenly planets or liberation from matter. And what to speak of worldly benedictions in the form of material prosperity, which are for those who are meant for death. Wow. Purple. When there are some similar points, it is possible to compare one thing to another. One cannot compare the association of a pure devotee to anything material. Men who are addicted to material happiness aspire to reach the heavenly planets like the moon, Venus, and Indra Loka. And those who are advanced in material philosophical speculation aspire after liberation from all material bondage. When one becomes frustrated with all kinds of material advancement, one desires the opposite type of liberation, which is called apurna bhava, or no rebirth. But the pure devotees of the Lord do not aspire after the happiness obtained in the heavenly kingdom, nor do they aspire after liberation from material bondage. In other words, for the pure devotees of the Lord, the material pleasure obtainable is the heavenly planet. And the heavenly planet are like phantasmagoria, and because they are already liberated from all material conception of pleasure and distress, they are factually liberated even in the material world. This means that the pure devotees of the Lord are engaged in a transcendental existence, namely in the loving service of the Lord. But in the material world and in the spiritual world, both in the material world and the spiritual world. As a government servant is always the same, either in the office or at home or at any place. So a devotee has nothing to do with anything material, for he is exclusively engaged in the transcendental service of the Lord. Since he has nothing to do with anything material, what pleasure can be derived from material benedictions like kingship or other overlordships? We shall finish quickly with the end of the body. Devotional service is eternal, it has no end, because it is spiritual. Therefore, since the assets of a pure devotee are completely different from material assets, there is no comparison between the two. Sutta Goswami was a pure devotee of the Lord, and therefore his association with the Rishi in Naimisarayan is unique. In the material world, association with gross materialists is veritably condemned. The materialist is called yogis, yosit sangi, or one who is much attached to material entanglement, women and other paraphernalia. Such attachment is conditioned because it drives away the benedictions of life and prosperity. And just the opposite is Bhagavata Sangi, or one who is always in the association with the Lord's name, form, qualities, etc. Such association is always desirable. It is worshipable. It is praiseworthy, and one may accept it as the highest goal of life.
All right. So this the sloka here, there's a very famous verse in Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's practically the first thing that Lord Chaitanya taught to Sanatana Goswami. You know that one? Sadhu Sangha, Sadhu Sangha. Anybody know it? Even a moment's association, it says even a lava matra, that's 1/11th part a second. 1 second divided in 11 parts, inconceivable short time, is the highest perfection. This is declared by all scriptures, association with the devotee. So we should, of course, seek association with devotees in whatever way we can. Association means working together, chanting together, serving together. And we should give our association to innocent people, because if people just meet a devotee for a few seconds even, they get so much benefit. So we ought to thank anyone who'll even talk to a devotee. All right?
Maharaj, I want to ask a question here. In the purport we just read, Prabhupada mentioned such attachment is conditioned because of it drives away the benedictions of life and prosperity. But then we see that generally people want to get prosperity, and they engage in material activity rather than engaging in the service of the Lord. But here it is practically stating that such attachment is conditioned because it drives away benedictions of life and prosperity. So could we say, even in devotional service, when devotees complain lack of prosperity or sufficiency, could it be as a result of attachment?
Well, because they're not really doing devotional service. You know, one can do service in the different modes of nature. So we try to stress, we want to come to the mode of goodness. And then beyond, then we can go beyond the mode of goodness. So if we're chanting, we're doing work, even distributing, preaching, pujari, but we're thinking, what will I get for this? I need material prosperity, you know, and one reason is because we've been conditioned by almost every religious teacher that is out there especially the ones that get the most publicity, are just telling you, by prayer, by in the name of Jesus, I'll make you rich, we'll make you prosperous, we'll make you this. So, people think they come to religion for different reasons. They come to Krishna for different reasons. So if they come because of the need for money or prosperity, then they won't get it necessarily. Of course, if someone fully surrenders to Krishna, he may get much more prosperity than he knows what to do with. But we've seen that also. But generally, the Brahmanas, they don't want it. They want to keep themselves poor so they don't get distracted. So they distribute the wealth every day. Whatever they get, they distribute it. Even water, they don't even save water overnight. They don't want to accumulate attachments. But if we really perform devotional service, then we can become freed from all these desires. And one way or another, some people without devotional service, they get burned out. But we can talk to many devotees that said they were mad after making money, and they were frustrated and unhappy, even though they got a lot of money. And then they became devotees, and they're still living. Some of them still have a lot of wealth. Some of them give it all up because of realizing a higher taste. Anyone else comment? So let's carry on. These are really wonderful verses, and I say every week, try to read them over again. Personality of Godhead, Krishna Govinda, is the exclusive shelter for all great living beings. And his transcendental attributes cannot even be measured by such masters of mystic powers as Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma. Can anyone who is expert in relishing nectar ever be fully satiated by hearing topics about him? Question mark. Purport. The thing is, by hearing about Krishna, we can become materially satiated, satisfied, that we're not thinking I need more and more and more. Even the trick of Maya is, I can't preach until I get more money, until I get a bigger vehicle, until I get, something. But we have to take whatever, like one very, very famous Christian preacher. He says he has a book called The Purpose-Driven Church and the Purpose-Driven Life. And he says, what is the purpose of your life? Your purpose is to glorify God. And whatever God has given you, that's perfect for you to utilize to glorify him. You don't need to think I need something else before I can do it. So that's quite a realization, and it's exactly what Prabhupada taught us. Prabhupada showed us he had actually nothing, right? And he came to America and he preached to whoever he met. He didn't think, first I have to start a business here in America and get rich, and then I can preach. He tells us that he thought he could do that back in his youth, but he said Krishna took away everything, and then he preached with absolutely nothing material, and we know the result. All right. Purport. Lord Shiva. Huh?
Yes, Maharaj, I wanted to ask a question in regards to your last comment.
Okay.
Srila Prabhupada, he tried several things to raise money by himself to preach, and he wasn't successful. And then he demonstrated by preaching when he has practically nothing. But the argument could come that Prabhupada is an empowered devotees, but in our own case, we're not pure devotees. We're coming from a background of a grossly conditioned life that is full of so many previous karmic situations. So it becomes very difficult to exhibit any potency even in our endeavor to preach. Even though when we have that sincere desire to preach, we have so much of difficulties. And then because we're not Prabhupada, we're not potent as Prabhupada, it becomes almost unbearable to continue in devotional service. So Maharaj, what would be your comment to that?
Well, that's because we're not, we're still on the bodily platform. We're representing Prabhupada. We see many, look at so many of these pastors and Christian pastors in Africa. You know, they just stand out in the park and they just start preaching, you know. And there's one right down the road from in Accra. He had this building. It looked like he just, you know, went to the scrapyard and got all kinds of pieces of wood that didn't match. He had a tiny little building, but he was preaching, and now he's got a big church there. You know, so many, they started out like that, just by themselves, you know. But somehow they, although they may not be preaching pure devotional service, but they're in so many of the big businesses are famous. They started with nothing, Apple computers, you know, but, and many others. Because we're attached to results, you know, Prabhupada just kept preaching no matter what. And he was showing us, you know, not only telling us don't be attached to results, but he was showing us he didn't worry that nobody was responding, that he had, you know, Prabhupada said many times he didn't have food to eat in the first year he was in America, many days. But he just, you know, he knew that his spiritual master was pleased by his effort. So if we're trying to please Krishna and spiritual master, we can keep going. If we're trying to please ourselves, then we're going to be very frustrated. Because there's never enough, we never get enough, you know, results. Does that make sense?
Yes, Maharaj, thank you very much.
Okay, I have time for one more here. I have to, Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma are two chiefs of the demigods. They're the big chiefs. They are full of mystic power. Shiva drank an ocean of poison, of which one drop was sufficient to kill an ordinary living being. Similarly, Brahma could create many powerful demigods, including Lord Shiva. So they are Ishvara, or lords of the universe, but they are not supremely powerful. The supreme powerful is Govinda, Lord Krishna. He's the transcendence, and his transcendental attributes cannot be measured even by such powerful Ishvaras as Shiva and Brahma. Therefore, Lord Krishna is the exclusive shelter of the greatest of all beings. Brahma is counted amongst the living beings, but he is the greatest of all of us. And why is the greatest of all the living beings so much attached to the transcendental topics of Lord Krishna? Because he is the reservoir of all enjoyment. Everyone wants to relish some kind of taste in everything, but one who is engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord can derive unlimited pleasure from such engagement. The Lord is unlimited, and his name, attributes, pastimes, entourage, variegatedness are unlimited. And those who relish them can do so unlimitedly and still not feel satisfied. This fact is confirmed in the Padma Purana. So Arjuna said, Krishna, go on speaking. I'm never satisfied. I'm never, you know, I want to hear more and more. The sages in Namaisharanya, they all said the same thing. Please continue, carry on, keep this. We never tire of hearing this. There's never enough. But a devotee is satiated with whatever comes materially. If we're comparing himself to others, and we think, you know, we think, you know, first I have to have a big temple, then I can preach, or first I have to have you know, a lot of money, or first I have to be in a big government position, then we won't preach. What this has happened to many. They get totally hung up in trying to get the facilities. And devotees in America did that. I think in Africa, same thing. And he started selling all these juju things, thinking if you get a lot of money, you can preach. But we just get caught up in America. They were selling paintings and selling this and that, and making so much money and thinking when we get all this money, then we can really preach. But they ended up losing all the money. They ended up in debt, misspending the money in different ways because they just forgot what the real purpose is. Okay, this is from the Purana. Ramante yogino yanante Satyananda Chiratmani Iti Rama Padena So Param Brahma Vibhudyate. The mystics derive unlimited transcendental pleasures from the absolute truth. Therefore, the supreme absolute truth, the personality of Godhead, is also known as Rama. That means spiritual pleasure. There's no end to transcendental discourses and mundane affairs. In mundane affairs, there's a law of satiation, but in transcendental, there is no such satiation. Sutta Goswami desired to continue the topics of Lord Krishna before the sages of Naimisharanya, and the sages expressed their readiness to hear from him continuously. Since the Lord is transcendence, and his attributes are transcendental, such discourses increase the receptive mode of the purified audience. So again, all this satiation. And materially, anything we do, if you're eating at a certain point, you think, okay, I'm full now. But then you'll get hungry again. If we, after a certain amount of money, income, and we get it, immediately we'll think, okay, this is great. But after a while, we want more. But when one gets spiritual, then you can think, okay, I have enough, whatever Krishna gives me. So we read about these Babajis, we read about these Avadutas in the Bhagavatam that are just sitting in one place. And they said, sometimes I'm living in a palace, sometimes, you know, sometimes I have nothing. So like you all know, the very beginning of preaching in West Africa, devotees went to places when they went to Accra and then like outside, and they had nothing out there in that village, but somehow they preached, and you know, there's a big temple there. So I'm sorry we got started late. This is the way the material world works. And I'm also sorry, I have to leave a little early today. It's just 5 minutes, but so I want to thank you. Make sure tomorrow you can start on time.
Yes, Maharaj.
Okay.
We're sorry for the delay today.
Well,
So
it's
devotees,
what can be done. This is the way of the world. These things happen.
thank you very much, Maharaj. So devotees, please
Nice that
kindly
now
unmute yourselves. Let us
the
chant.
African internet seems to be working quite steadily nowadays, so that's good.
Yes, it's getting better, Maharaj.
Okay, so
So let's
thank you.
loudly chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra to appreciate
Hare
Maharaj for giving us
Krishna,
this blessing.
Hare Krishna,
Krishna, Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Vanchakapatarubyas Chakripa Sindhubyas Vascha Patitanam Pavashnibhyo Vaishnavyo Namaha. His Holiness Kavicandra Swami Maharaj Ki Jai. So dear devotees, thank you very much for joining. Tomorrow we'll try to be there on early. It's just one of those things, management situation drove me away from the deities. But by Krishna's grace, we'll be there early tomorrow.
Okay, let me just make a little comment about your situation there.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, please go ahead.
You know, the issue of the local people, you know, one has to be very careful. You
Absolutely.
know, you have to see that man one-on-one, you know, discuss with him, romancing. And that's a great preaching also, because once he can accept you, the entire community will accept. Some people, they just like things like that. You just have to give it to them.
That's exactly what I'm going to do now, because
and then the devotees, some of us have the mentality, they don't even want anybody to enter the temple. They don't even want to mix with, that type of mentality. It's not going to work for us. We are not many, so we should make that principles of mercy and and kindness. We should sort of tolerate people in the community, and then like that it makes life easy for us. Like the water you are giving them is very, very important. It's very, very important.
Yeah, actually, we've been doing so much in the community. It's just that this new Miangua came, and some of the other have been overwhelmed with work. I didn't have opportunity to meet him one-on-one. So he's feeling slighted that I've not given him recognition. So that was why he was making the rules. And then when we met, when he wrote the letter, I went to meet with him. He said he wants to see the owners. I said, please, I'm the representative. Can you speak with me? He said he wants to see. So I went there with our trustees and our lawyer. Then he became angry again. He said, okay, now we're bringing lawyers.
That's not what he wanted. You're an African man now in Nigeria.
So I said, okay, I understand the message. I will see you one-on-one.
Any little thing you give him, then you will let you understand that it's not a money-making organization, but this little thing, you should not accept. Hare Krishna, Prabhu, you are doing very well.
Krishna, thank you. Thank you very much, Prabhuji.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna. Uncle Atol, please forgive us. The great Kamalash. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Okay, Prabhuji, thank you very much for being here. Hare Krishna.